everyone and welcome to my October reading wrap up. In October I read a total of 8 books, which is again a really great number. I'm very pleased with that. I've been saying this for a couple of months. I've been saying this for almost the entire year actually, but I'm in such a good reading mood and such a good reading flow, and yeah, I couldn't be more happy about it. The theme of this month's wrap up is definitely rereads, because out of the 8 books that I read, 6 of them were rereads of some of my all-time favorite books and all-time favorite book series. But also the new books that I read this month were very good. So yeah, basically I had an amazing reading month, and yeah, let's just get started with this video and then I'm going to tell you all about the books that I read in October. So I started off October with a reread of Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I reread this book to prepare myself for Muse of Nightmares, about which I will talk in a minute. But yeah, it had been a year since I read Strange the Dreamer, so I had forgotten a lot of details, so I thought it would be a good idea to refresh my memory and also just enjoy this wonderful book again. This time around I listened to the audiobook, and let me just tell you, the audiobook is absolutely amazing. The narrator is so wonderful, it feels so magical, it really captures the atmosphere of the book really well. If you don't know, Strange the Dreamer is about a boy named Laszlo Strange who is very much obsessed with the lost city of Weep. And yeah, that's all I can say about it. Like, the premise of this book is really hard to explain without spoiling like major plot events. So yeah, it's very hard to tell you what it's exactly about. I can tell you that it's very magical, very whimsical, and it's just such a lovely written book. The first time around I was in love with it. It's so beautiful and it just captures you immediately. This time around I loved it even more. I didn't know that was possible, but I loved it even more. And I think that's mostly because I now know how everything is going to go and how everything sort of connects with each other. So this time I wasn't wondering about certain plot events and I could just enjoy everything and just really immerse myself in this beautiful story. I will say though, Strange the Dreamer, I think the beginning can be a bit slow because this book really takes its time with building up this world and all these characters. It's done in a beautiful way, but I can understand why it can be hard to get into at first because it's so yeah, slow and it really takes its time and you don't know exactly what is going to happen until around like the first half of the book. But I loved it. It's so good. If you haven't picked it up, please do. It's so beautiful. And yeah, of course I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. And yeah, that brings me to Muse of Nightmares, the second book in the duology. This book came out at the beginning of October and I had been anticipating it so much. I was so excited to receive it. After a year of waiting, I couldn't wait to see what was going to happen with this story and yeah, how everything would continue. Let me tell you, I was not disappointed. This book was so incredible. I think I loved it even more than Strange the Dreamer, but I think that's mostly because in this book you already know the world and you already know the characters, so it's a lot faster and there's more action. It's still not a super heavy, fast-paced book. It still takes its time with certain conversations and like actions and things that are happening. But this book is so intense and the entire time I was just like, oh my god, what is this? I love it. It's, I don't know, I want to continue. I want to see what's going to happen next. Muse of Nightmares was everything that I hoped it would be. I was definitely not disappointed by how the duology ended, and I just loved it so much. It was again so beautifully written. Like really, Laini Taylor is such an exceptional writer. She does it so well. Being able to write so beautifully like she does is really an artwork, and there are not a lot of people who can pull it off. And I just love it, and I love this book series. It's now one of my all-time favorites. And yeah, I was so happy that this book lived up to my expectations and that I was not disappointed. And of course I gave Muse of Nightmares also 5 out of 5 stars. Then next, another reread, and it was my reread of Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. I am rereading all the Harry Potter books. It's of course my all-time favorite series, in case you didn't know that yet. So yeah, I reread Chamber of Secrets and I actually did a whole video review and discussion about this book. I'm going to do a video for every book in the Harry Potter series and you guys really seem to like it, so yeah, very happy about that. Very happy about the positive response to that. Chamber of Secrets is my least favorite book in the series, but like that's still such an amazing book and I very much enjoyed my reread. I was just so happy to be in the Harry Potter world again, and I cannot wait for like the rest of my reread because I just love this so much. And yeah, it's just, I cannot explain it. It's just so good. And if you want to see my video review about this, I will leave links down below, up here, everywhere if you want to check it out. But of course I gave Chamber of Secrets 5 out of 5 stars because it's a Harry Potter book. It's all 5 out of 5 stars, and yeah, I just loved it very much, and I will definitely continue with Prisoner of Azkaban next month. Then another reread, I know, it's so much this month, but it was City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare. This book matches perfectly with my sweater, by the way, just noticing that. But anyway, I have been rereading all the Shadowhunter books in preparation for Queen of Air and Darkness in December. I've said this so many times in so many wrap-ups now, but yeah, I have been rereading everything. And in October I finished my reread of the Mortal Instruments series with City of Heavenly Fire. I listened to the audiobook and I really enjoyed that. It's partly narrated by Sophie Turner, which is amazing because I love her voice, and it's also like Sansa Stark is reading the Mortal Instruments to me, but she does a really good job. And yeah, I love City of Heavenly Fire. Like, I've talked about the Mortal Instruments series a lot of times and I just love the series very much. It's very much YA and it's definitely not perfect, but within its sort of YA genre, I think it's a really good one. And definitely the last book does a really great job. It's a long one, but I very much enjoyed it again. And yeah, happy that I finished with my reread of the entire series, and I gave City of Heavenly Fire also 5 out of 5 stars. Then I also read not a reread, but a completely new book. Whoa, shocking. But it is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. So this is my first Brandon Sanderson book ever. I had never read anything by him before. And I watched a couple of videos and a lot of people recommended Warbreaker as his book to start with because as of right now it's a standalone and it's a little bit more easier to get into than some of his other books I've heard. So that's why I picked it up. I was very much in the mood for fantasy. And yeah, Warbreaker is about this sort of magical world, and it's about 2 princesses. One of them has to marry the mysterious God King, and the other one goes on a secret mission yeah, to sort of rescue her. And there's this threat of war between 2 kingdoms, and yeah. And then there's also a magic system that is sort of based on colors, and it's about awakening and sort of making objects do what you want them to do. So yeah, it's incredibly high fantasy book. I loved it so much. I was afraid that this book might be hard to get into because I'm always a little bit intimidated by high fantasy books. But that was not the case at all. It was actually very easy to get into this story. The magic system is explained really well, but also in a very natural way. It's not like a lot of exposition. It's just told within the story, and it's so easy to get into it and to understand everything. I just love the way this book dealt with the story, with the magic, with the world building. Even though it's, as of right now, a standalone, I believe there's another book coming. It still does a really great job of building up this world and making you care about all these characters. I wouldn't say that this book is very action-packed. I guess it can be considered slow at some points, but I didn't mind because I loved all the characters so much, and I loved all the conversations so much, and I loved the mystery and of not knowing how everything like was sort of fitting together. This was just such an amazing book and I enjoyed it so much, and it's definitely one of my new all-time favorite fantasy books. And it also makes me really excited to read some of Brandon Sanderson's other books. So I will probably start the Mistborn trilogy very soon now. I've said this many times, but this time it's actually going to happen. But yeah, his writing is just so amazing. The characters are all so fleshed out, and the world building, as I said, is really great. I loved Warbreaker very much, and this book I also gave 5 out of 5 stars. A lot of 5 stars this month actually. I think it's only 5 stars. But yeah, it's really good, and yeah, I can definitely recommend it. I think it's one of his lesser read books. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. But if you want to read a fantasy book but you don't want to commit to an entire series, please try out Warbreaker because I think you will really like it. And then lastly, the last 3 books I read this month are all part of the same series, and it is the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins. So I read The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. I listened to the series for the first time on audiobook, and I Really enjoyed it. I've said it a couple of times before in videos, but The Hunger Games is one of my all-time favorite book series. Again, it's a book series I've loved for a very long time. I read it for the first time when the first movie came out. I was 16. I fell in love with it. I've reread it many times since. And it had been like a year and a half since I last read it. So I really felt like just reading these books again. And I just love them still so much. I think this series holds up so well. And yeah, I can still see why I fell in love with it in the first place. In case you don't know what The Hunger Games is about, I think most people do, but in case you don't, The Hunger Games is about a dystopian version of America, where there are 12 different districts, and every year every district has to send one boy and one girl to compete in the Hunger Games, where there can only be one survivor and one winner. I remember hearing that premise for the first time and I was like, oh my god, I love it. I mean, I don't love dead children, but I love the premise. It sounds so exciting and so original. At the time it sounded really original because I think this was like the first YA dystopian book series I ever read. And yeah, I just still love it so much, and yeah, it's such an amazing book series. I cannot really say anything else about it. The audiobooks were also really good, really engaging, and I just flew through them. I basically listened to all 3 of them in 2 weeks time. So I actually have an entire video about The Hunger Games, like a review video and discussion video. It is very old. It was one of the earlier videos I've ever filmed, but I rewatched it and I still definitely agree with everything I say in that video and like all the discussion points. So if you want to hear more about my thoughts on The Hunger Games with spoilers, then I would definitely recommend watching that video. But yeah, it's an earlier video, so yeah, you know, I wasn't like completely used to talking to a camera yet, but I still agree with everything I said. So yeah, it still holds up in that way. But yeah, of course I gave like the entire series 5 out of 5 stars again because it's amazing. I love it, and yeah, I will probably keep rereading this in the future because it's just so good. So yeah, that was it for my October reading wrap up, full with rereads and 5-star reads. A very good reading month. I'm very happy about that, and yeah, I'm just so excited what amazing books the next month is going to bring. But this is it now for this video, and if you like this video, maybe go subscribe or give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that if you did. And then hopefully I will see you again very soon in my next video. Bye!